Head teaching professional Rob Curtis here. Just thought I'd give you an insight into what the pros do to get better. We've got my good friend today here, Daniel Vladetta, who's a well-renowned movement specialist in Australia and all over the world. He's been a inventor and creator of two amazing products that I plan on using quite extensively in my coaching to help improve golfers' coachability as well as their overall well-being and their ability to move while swinging a golf club.
Good. So what we're going to work on with Robbie today is, he said he's having a bit of a hard time getting his hands up. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
In a dynamic. So the first thing I'm going to rule out is to make sure that there's not some sort of hardware issue, i.e. his joints can't get into that position. So can you just show me what you mean by which position do you need?
Yeah, sure. So I want to feel like I'm a bit
more up higher. Okay. So there's two things that are going on, well, there's multiple things that are going on. That hip is being internally rotated, that hip is externally rotated. He's got a lot of lateral flexion and rotation of his trunk. This shoulder is being internally rotated and this shoulder is being externally rotated. So what I'm going to do is just break down some of these movements. We've just gone through with Robbie previously to test his dynamically being able to control his pelvis and laterally move his thorax and also rotate. And you've passed those tests. Or do you want us to do those tests again?
Yeah, we can do them again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, I think what we want to look at now is like, I want to see what your shoulders do. So if you look at Robbie's shoulder here, he's got no problem without any sort of thoracic rotation to get that shoulder up and internally rotate. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and in this shoulder, we're looking to see what his external rotation is, and if you turn sideways to the camera, that 90 degrees is sort of passable. Anything past 90 is a good external rotation of the shoulder, so we're wanting to see that elbow in front of the hand to get good rotation, and that's going to help him get up into that position. You can see that his elbow is in front of his hand, so he's a pass on that external rotation. We've already done some active, but we can just do it for the camera in standing, is to look at lateral flexion of his thorax. Stand on one leg. Okay. Can he laterally flex and move his thorax? Really important, because go the other leg. Because these are things you're going to have to do in a golf swing. You're going to be loaded on one leg. Yep. Cool. And he can move, he can laterally flex. Cool. Now from that position, can you rotate? Awesome. Try to keep your pelvis still and keep that pelvis still. And we're looking at, can he just move his thorax and his spine without his pelvis moving? Cool. Change legs. And we've got a way to really break this movement down on dynamic devices. He's a bit wobbly on this leg. Okay. Try to keep the pelvis still. Okay, and what we found and what we're seeing here is that his rotation to the left is not so good, but his rotation to the right is really good. So that doesn't make sense as to why he's having a hard time getting his hands up, because the moving parts are all good. So what I'm going to try to look for is, can we activate different parts of Robbie's body to free up his hands to move up there? Because one of the things that I'm sort of looking at is, can this lat really lengthen to get his hands in that position? Now he can do that passively, but when he's in a golf swing, is something restricting that? Now that lat is involved with that glute. That glute is obviously stabilizing and that hip. There are other factors and other muscles that can help stabilize that hip. So I'm going to go looking for something. So can you get yourself in your backswing?
Yep.
I'm going to use some trusty bands. Yep. And I'm going to look for, we're not going to hit any balls here, we're just going to try to get you in that backswing position, and you show me where you're struggling with that.
Well, about here I have this sort of feeling where it's, at times it's my left arm.
Yep.
I'm getting this sense that this is always too low and too much this way, whereas probably about here is the point.
You wanting to get that a little bit, feel like there's a bit more space.
Yeah.
So we're really working on creating length at the back of his shoulder and along his back here, which is his latissimus dorsi, right? So I know that lat is also related, that left lat, is related to this right oblique and that left adductor. So the first thing I'm going to look for is he got a problem with this sling? That because if he's rotating that way, that back is having to lengthen, but this front is having to shorten. So that's a sling that comes across. And this lat and glute work as one sling, and these obliques and this adductor work as another sling. So the first thing I'm going to look for is if I do this, and I'm going to load that adductor for you.
Yep.
Okay. Now let's see if we can get your hands up.
Easier.
Easier.
Yeah, so much easier.
So
crazy. Crazy.
Okay. So
yeah.
And what that's enabling you to do is activate more through the front and these right obliques, right? Because that movement is actually activating them. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let's see you hit a ball. Let's go. I'm going to try to see if I can get out of the way because I've got some really long bands. Okay? I trust Robbie. Okay?
Strap
Let's
yourselves
see if
in.
you can. Let's see if you can get.
Okay, it was a start.
It's a start.
That felt totally different.
Your hands are up high.
Oh.
That is what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so we're going to then look at. So we're going to look at some some adductor activations and eccentric activations of that adductor, because we know that we need to open that hip up for you. So we're going to work on some activations for that adductor to get some length into that, and without me using the band, right? But what we know that is if we lengthen that adductor, you're going to get your hands up a little bit higher. So we're going to lie you on your back. You can face the camera. And normally I would use a soft, squishy ball, right? You don't have anything like that, like a little,
No, I don't know.
That's fine. We're going to use the basket. So lie back, knees bent, left foot behind your right. Yep. Right, really tucked in behind your right. Come all the way around. Yep.
Oh, that way?
Yep. Yeah. And we're going to use the basket. And what you're going to do is take that knee down, and you're going to squash that basket down. And you can feel that it's going to activate the external rotators of your hip, but it's going to lengthen that. It's going to lengthen that adductor to allow you to create that. Okay, so keep holding that. We're going to hold that for about 30 seconds. You're going to have a rest for 5, and we're going to do it a few times. And really try to squash that basket, which is firing up your external rotators and your glutes.
Yep.
Right? It's also going to move your hip around in the socket, and we know that that was an issue with your swing because you weren't able to clear your hips properly, right? So let's see if we can do an all-over change and get your hands up and your pelvis clearing properly, and by changing this hip position. Good. Relax. Going to do one more. So just pushing down into that basket. Try to keep your lower back flat on the floor. That's it, without extending. And just hold that there. Awesome. We've got 30 seconds. We're going to hold it for. And then we're going to see how that changes two things. Can it create more space for you to get up in your sling? So the interesting thing about the body is that, you know, you've got to have space for it to move into. You know, and if something is tight, it's because your brain is trying to stabilize it, not because your muscles are not able to lengthen necessarily. And that's why we did the passive test versus the dynamic test, to see whether there was a problem with the actual joints or whether it was just a software problem. And what we found with Robbie, it was a software problem. It was just an activation problem. So we're changing his brain strategy around that left hip. So let's stand up. Look how much more space you got there. Yeah. So now let's grab your club. Where did that go? Right. And I'm not going to use any band. right? And now just without taking a swing first, let's see, and your feet normal. I know you've been working on externally rotating that front one. We've changed the position of that hip a little bit. So now feel if you can get up, your hands up a little bit higher on your golf swing. How's that feel?
Yeah, excellent.
And did you clear okay?
Yeah, felt great.
Okay.
Felt great.
So the body's amazing because you've got all these slings, these diagonal patterns through the body, and it makes sense because if you're going to build a structure, you're going to cross strut it to give it stability. And these slings are our way to not only help our body move, but also to stabilize our pelvis when we're rotating and laterally flexing. So if your body's restricted, even though you've got the ability to move it, in dynamic situations it's restricted, then it's probably one of these sling patterns that are not being activated properly to allow that movement.
Makes a lot of sense. I know in the past when I felt like I've been trying to externally rotate in here,
Yeah.
it was almost feeling like it was sort of like bearing a lot of, like I was feeling a lot of pain through there.
Yeah.
And I just think because as you say, it wasn't activated.
It wasn't activating in your external rotators and your glutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is going to, that exercise is going to, activation is going to change the position of that left hip, right? Which is then going to stop this adductor being overactive, which is your tendencies to drop that left knee in the backswing. And it's going to be able to keep that width because that adductor was short and tight, and that was stopping you lengthening from that anterior sling. Right? Yeah. So you can feel that left knee doesn't want to drop in as much.
Yeah, no, it feels so much more
So
stable.
just by opening up that hip. So sometimes a defaultive swing is not you being able to actually swing the golf club properly, is that your body hasn't got the ability to move somewhere, right? Or the tissues haven't got the ability to lengthen. And so then your body does something else to compensate it because you're so focused on a task of hitting a ball. So there's this dance and this balance between getting the body to be able to do all the basic movements to then be able to work with someone like Robbie to hit the ball well. So it's this, you've got to address both sides of the body to be able to hit the ball, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you can't do the movement, you're not going to be able to get your hand in different positions, right?
Yeah, it makes 100% absolute sense. And you know, I've always been trying to fight it the other way.
Yeah.
That's the irony of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to see, you know, specialist people like yourself. I think it's really important.
Well, and also one of the other things is that you thought that the outside of your leg was really tight, but as we talked about before, there's short and tight and there's long and tight, and you're going to have signals coming from your tissues when that tissue is long and tight, because that's when tissue gets damaged. Tissue gets damaged when it gets over lengthened. That's why it's called a muscle tear, right? Because you tear it. You cannot damage tissue by over contracting it. You can cramp, but it will not tear the muscle or the tissue. So you're going to have more signals and more warning bells coming to your brain when the tissue's long and tight. And what do? We go, oh, that's tight, and we stretch it, or we roll it, or we try to release it. You know, and that was what Robbie was doing with his hip, and he was getting ITB tightness and hip tightness, where what we actually needed to do was to activate those lateral and posterior muscles to allow his hip to change position and open up more in the swing. And it also got his ability to get his hands up higher in the swing.
Absolutely, yeah. It feels so much easier just to get my arms up.
Yeah. Awesome.
Crazy.
Super easy. Thanks, man.
Hope you enjoyed that, everyone. I do plan on bringing out Daniel for future sessions and working with our core group of golfers out here, but stay tuned for the next session.